Okay, today I have John with us. He obviously does French Resistance reenacting. So why did you choose to portray French Resistance?
There's a long history to my interest in history. So back when I was a kid, everybody's dad in my neighborhood was a World War II veteran. Both of my parents were World War II veterans, and they all had just an encyclopedia of stories. And I grew up in that culture of hearing all these stories about World War II. So at a very early age, my interest in history was born. And I just carried it on through the entirety of the rest of my life. And then back in the mid-'80s, I got interested in Civil War reenacting because a cousin of mine was doing genealogical research. And I found out that my great-grandfather was the first sergeant of Company C of the 13th Tennessee Cavalry. So that got me into Civil War reenacting, another historical era. And then a few years ago, I was looking for something interesting to do. And I came across the D-Day Conneaut event. So got in touch with a friend of mine who had also been doing Civil War reenacting with me for years and years and years. And we came up here to see the event, and we're just overawed by it. And when we got to the French Resistance camp, who did we find here but another guy that we used to do Civil War reenacting, who also happened to be a college friend and fraternity brother of mine. So in chatting with him, he told me everything that was needed to get into doing French Resistance, and I thought, you know, everybody's seen Band of Brothers, everybody wanted to be Dick Winters, so doing GI was out for me. And I thought French Resistance is one of those lesser known, lesser researched facets of the war, and that's what got me into doing French Resistance.
So how do you go about researching your impression and your gear?
Well, the big part of doing a impression is you have to put yourself in that first person mindset. It's not they did this or they had that or they lived here or there. It's I lived here. This is what I did. You become that character or person, and then you build around that, and it helps to incorporate some of your own personal interests in it. Mm-hmm. So like for myself, I've been wrenching on bicycles since I was like 8 years old. Mm-hmm. If you look at bicycles in France, like during the 1920s, cycling was just all the rage. And at one point there was something like 650 bicycle manufacturers or accessory manufacturers for bicycles in France, and there was like 1.5 people per bicycle. Mm-hmm. So I incorporated that bit of knowledge and my own interest into creating my character who owned a bicycle shop. So then I started researching bicycle shops in France. And I found that there's one in Deauville up on the Channel Coast that's been there since 1924. I thought, well, this is perfect. So from that, I got the idea. It was like, okay, obviously I'm not going to pass for a 20-year-old conscript. However, I could pass for a World War I veteran who, following the armistice, moved to Deauville and opened a bicycle shop in 1924, which is still there. So that became part of my characterization. And after all those years of doing Civil War reenacting without hearing protection, my hearing has suffered for it. So I incorporated that into my character and made him a captain of artillery who lost his hearing from being around so much artillery fire during the First World War. So if I occasionally cock my head at an angle and say, what? I'm not faking it.
And I think it's interesting with you doing the bike, because you fixed up so many bikes that are around the encampment. How many bikes have you fixed up? Do you have any idea?
Let's see. I did 2 for the museum. Let's see, there's the one that I prefer to ride. And then, see, there was one ladies' bike, too. So I've probably done 5 so far, and I've got probably another 5 sitting in my basement awaiting conversion. And generally what's involved in that is taking an orphan bike from like Goodwill or Salvation Army for $10. But keep in mind, a European bicycle of the 1930s looked different from an American bicycle of the 1930s. So having the trapezoid frame, where you've got the top bar, the front bar, and then the seat bar, forming sort of a triangle, all straight tubing. That's correct for doing a European bicycle, whereas the American bikes of the era, like the Columbias and the Monarchs, the top tube on that had a long arching curve on it to sort of mimic the curvature of the gas tank on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. So if you're gonna be doing a European bike, make sure it's square tube, triangle framed.
What about ladies' bikes? From any information on that?
Ladies' bikes, they had the twin tubes coming down off the fork tube, and then just the seat tube coming up. So again, it's 3 tubes without any fancy S-curves like the American bikes. And as far as doing the restoration and demodernization of a lot of them, so like back in the late 50s and 60s, a lot of Raleighs and were imported from England. So and they haven't changed their design since like 1898. And then the Schwinn collegiate bikes of that era also have that European frame, so they are ideal candidates for conversion into a European-looking bike of the era. And what's generally involved is, keep in mind, generally the British bikes are black, very boring. The bicycle manufacturers on the continent realized there was more than one crayon in the box, and you'll find them in a plethora of colors. Nice pastel blues, greens. Red was not all that popular. Yellow is almost non-existent, and anything with a metallic finish is going to be totally incorrect. So you just basically strip them completely down, and you can either chemically get all the paint off and then wire brush it, or what I like to do, because it's a whole lot quicker and cleaner for me, is just hang it up from the clothesline in the backyard and sandblast it. Get all the old paint off, get a nice coat of primer on it, and then the color of your choice.
Cool.
And then, of course, the bearings in where the fork is, and then down in the crank, probably need attention. But I got to warn you, a number of them, especially the Raleighs, use loose bearings. They're not captive in a little race. So when you go to take that fork off, be very careful, because those bearings will fall out and they will run away. But if that happens to you, everything is not lost, because a standard BB is the same diameter as the bearings used in those bikes. So if something bad happens where some of them run away, they're pretty easy to replace.
That's a handy tip to have in your toolbox,
exactly.
proverbial toolbox.
And it's one of those things that I discovered quite by accident. And for anybody watching, this is a good time to bring up what Chancellor Bismarck once said. Experience is a good teacher, but it's best to learn from other people's mistakes. That's the kind of knowledge you pass on to other people so they don't make the same mistake.
Big thanks to John for sitting down and sharing with us. This is only the first part of my time sitting down with John. This interview was filmed a while back at D-Day, but everything John talked about in the first part still hits just as hard. building a believable impression, grounding it in real history, and letting your own skills and experience shape the character of your kit instead of forcing something that's artificial to you. In the next video, we're going to pick back up with some of the more practical realities of reenacting. Weapon workarounds, backdating modern items, and then zooming out into some of the bigger picture thoughts about history and the French Resistance that I think a lot of people maybe don't explore enough. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider sharing it with somebody who is interested in World War II history or reenacting. And if you've got questions, thoughts, or your own experiences, drop them down below in the comments. This hobby works best when people pass knowledge along instead of keeping it to themselves. This is Brave Builds, where history, kit, and reenacting all come together to help us build a better understanding of their bravery, because their stories deserve to be remembered.